Hey everybody, welcome back to the weekly Weed Watch. This week what I want to do is I want to highlight the weed that is turning a lot of our Kentucky no-till fields yellow. So let's go ahead and check it out. Alright everybody, so this week's weed is going to be Cressleaf Groundsel, and as I mentioned before, it produces those yellow flowers. You can see there in the background there's some dandelions as well, but the one I want to highlight is Cressleaf Groundsel with these yellow flowers here. So here's Cressleaf Groundsel, looking all the way down. It is a fairly large weed at this time of the season. And again, most of our Kentucky no-till fields that have that yellow tinge to them is going to be primarily this weed. It is a winter annual, so it comes up in the fall, and then it's going to put on these flowers here in the spring, and then it'll be gone by time we get into May. You can see already some of those flowers have already set their seed for the season. So it is primarily a problem in our no-till fields in the springtime, and for the most part we can control it fairly well with our burn down herbicides such as glyphosate plus 2,4-D or glyphosate plus dicamba. Like all of our winter annuals, it's much easier to control if we get to it early rather than waiting until it's at this stage right here, although we can still get fairly good control of it with it at this stage. But obviously at this point in time it's putting on seed, so the earlier the better. Now, some people assume that this is a mustard simply because of the yellow flowers, and if you look at some of those basal leaves, it's very similar to a mustard, but it is not a mustard. So again, it does come up as a rosette. You can see those highly divided leaves with lots of lobes there, and going all the way back to the petiole on that lobe, much like many of our mustards. But the difference here is these within your Cressleaf Groundsel, you can see those serrations, a lot more sharp serrations there, whereas a mustard on that leaf margin, it's going to be more of a kind of a rounded serration and more of a wavy serration than these sharp serrations that we see on Cressleaf Groundsel. The other thing is, if you look in there, you can see that main stem's purple, and some of these petioles have that purple tinge to them right down there at the base, which you're going to get on Cressleaf Groundsel versus a mustard. So that usually I don't like to go with color, but Cressleaf Groundsel is pretty consistent with that purple tinge, which can help identify it as well. And the other thing is, as you look at these flowers, okay, these are ray flowers, okay, so you have that central disc that's surrounded by petals, and you have anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 petals around that central disc or that ray flower. And I'll show you here some mustards here in a second, and those flowers look completely different. The other thing you can do is, if you look at that central stem, you can snap it off pretty easily, and you can see that that central stem is hollow in the middle there. So it is a hollow stem, whereas you're not going to have that on mustard. So I do have a mustard plant here as well, so let's go take a look at that. Okay, so here's our mustard species, and I've just been referring to mustards as a genus as a whole. There's many species within the mustard family. So we're not going to get into distinguishing the different mustards from each other, just simply because that's more than what we're trying to capture here today, and we're trying to capture Cressleaf Groundsel anyway. But here we have some yellow rocket, and again, does yellow flowers and the highly divided leaves of the mustards, like this here of the yellow rocket, if you can see in there, that's why sometimes the two of them can be mixed up. But as you look at that leaf and compare it back to the Cressleaf Groundsel, you can see those differences. This one's got more of the wavy serrations rather than those sharp serrations. And again, it depends on what mustard species you're looking at. But all mustards are going to have these very distinct flowers, yellow flowers, and you can see on those flowers, each of those individual flowers has 4 petals. Okay, so every single one of them is going to have 4 petals, and that's distinctive of a mustard species, is that you have a 4-petaled yellow flower there, and that tells us that this is a mustard. Remember that Cressleaf Groundsel had a ray flower with 5, 10, 15 different petals on it. And you can see here also the distinctive seed pods that the mustards have that tells you this is a mustard species and not Cressleaf Groundsel. So that is our weekly weed, Cressleaf groundsel, weed that is responsible for most of the yellow flowers that occur out there in the no-till fields. I appreciate you tuning in. Check back in with us next week for the next weekly weed.